They survived the war, but their biggest challenge might be just beginning. Gulf states spent decades building themselves into the Middle East's success story. Gleaming skylines, luxury tourism, global events, trillion-dollar sovereign wealth funds, ambitious views of the future. Behind it was the crucial guarantee of American military protection so that the wars and instability of the wider region would never come home. But then came the Iran war. That promise didn't hold. Iranian missiles slammed into Gulf cities. Then a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, which is the main channel these economies live on. Now there's an agreement to pause the fighting, and that's good news for the Gulf states.
We welcome the announcement of the agreement reached between the United States of America and Iran regarding the Memorandum of Understanding on addressing the outstanding issues between them, including ensuring freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. This represents an important step towards consolidating sustainable peace and achieving the interests of people, particularly in the Middle East region and the world at large.
Now, the agreement's precise details are not due to be announced until Friday, but this is what we know so far. Fighting will pause for 60 days, and the Strait of Hormuz will fully reopen to all shipping. There'll be negotiations between the US and Iran aimed at setting up a plan for a permanent end to the fighting. Gulf states will be concerned about what's not in the agreement. The future of Iran's missile program has not been addressed, nor its drone capabilities or its regional proxy groups like the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And Iran may still be able to exercise its power to close the Strait of Hormuz again. And there appear to be no long-term security guarantees for Gulf states on the table. I'm joined now by Mona Yacoubian. She's Director and Senior Advisor of the Middle East Program at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. And she has more than 30 years of experience working on the Middle East and North Africa with a focus on conflict analysis, among other things. Mona, it's good to have you with us. For months, Gulf states found themselves caught in the middle of a war, with Iran posing this existential threat to them. Now, are those Gulf states breathing a sigh of relief about the pause in fighting?
Without a doubt. I think for the last 3+ months, they've been living their worst nightmare, just as you noted, basically watching this vision of economic diversification and vitality under threat through the war between the US and Iran. So the current MOU and potentially a longer ceasefire and maybe even a deal between the US and Iran comes as very welcome news indeed to the countries of the Gulf.
Right, but the US was not able to prevent Iran from attacking them. So do you think the leaders in these states will have concluded that Washington can no longer protect them?
I'm not sure that they'll come to that drastic of a conclusion that Washington can no longer protect them, but I think they are rethinking the notion of the United States as the sole guarantor of their security. I think they are broadening their aperture as to whom they will work with. Yes, the United States will, I think, retain a central role, but we will also likely see Gulf countries diversifying their security relationships, as we've already started to see. I think we can expect to see more of that in the coming months and years.
We'll come to a bit of that in a moment, but just focusing on the agreement itself. This appears to be focused on stopping the war and reopening the Strait of Hormuz. But we don't see much on the issues of Iran's missiles, the drones, the proxy networks, the issues that the Gulf states are worried about.
Well, let's remember that, first of all, no one's seen the text as of yet of the MOU, so we don't know exactly what's contained in it. But we do know that this was an agreement to begin talks. It's not meant to be part of a final status discussion. And so you're absolutely right, though, that even in the foreshadowing of nuclear talks, which are slated to begin as part of this MOU, There's really been no discussion of these broader issues of Iran's ballistic missile capabilities, of its support for regional proxies. And this clearly has Gulf countries concerned about what the future will hold. What kind of power is Iran going to project in the region? And what is their best possible strategy moving forward?
Now, while the war was going on, we saw some of these states like Qatar and Saudi Arabia maintaining diplomatic channels with Tehran, even though the strikes were going on. What was this about? Were they engaging because they felt they could influence Iran diplomatically, or what do you think it was about?
I think they're engaging and will continue to engage with Iran because they realize that Iran is there to stay, that Iran is not going anywhere. It is a large country of more than 90 million people. And I think countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, and we're hearing now even the United Arab Emirates, which had taken a more aggressive and muscular posture against Iran, we're hearing that all of them are engaging to one degree or another in private discussions with Iranian stakeholders and leaders to think about what is the way forward for this region.
Hmm. Looking at Iran's, you just touched on it there, Iran's status within the region, do you think it's come out with a greater regional influence than before?
I mean, I think that's hard to deny. If, in fact, as it appears to be the case, that Iran, because of its continuing missile and drone capabilities, because of its demonstrated ability to disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, I don't think there's any going back to the status quo ante. I think we are entering a new normal that will feature Iran in a de facto sense, retaining the ability to disrupt traffic through the strait. And also, it has shown its willingness to cross every red line, including undertaking drone and missile strikes on its Gulf neighbors. This, I'm afraid, is the new reality. And that's why we're seeing Gulf countries really rethink their posture and rethink the way forward.
Hmm. And as they rethink their posture, who do you think they will be looking to while they're not looking exclusively to the US for protection?
Well, I think, as I said earlier, they're going to look at diversifying their defense and security relationships. They've talked, I was in Doha a few weeks ago, and there was discussion about Europe playing a favorable role, that the UK, the French, among others, have been there. And I think we could see, we were likely to see deepening defense ties with those countries. But we'll also see new countries entering the scene. And here I think what's interesting is looking at the role of Ukraine. Ukraine, which has become an innovative player in the anti-drone technology space. We saw President Zelensky visiting the Gulf a little while back. That could really be a preview for deepening ties between Gulf countries and Ukraine as they seek effective anti-drone technology.
And how do these countries see the US right now?
I think there is more than a little bit of disappointment in the United States. Many Gulf countries, Gulf stakeholders will say that this was not their war, that they had advised against this war, and that they weren't consulted when the United States opted to undertake the war. So I think a degree of a trust deficit that had characterized relations even before the Iran war, I think that trust deficit may be deepening. Much is going to depend on what this agreement that was negotiated with Iran looks like with respect to reopening the strait, and what kind of Iran is left in place in the region that the Gulf countries will have to contend with.
And as well as that, just wondering what the Gulf leaders will be wondering now, particularly in light of the international investors they've been trying to attract to their region, and whether the view from those investors changes.
Well, I think the view from the investors is one of concern. I mean, I think that it's going to take some time to win back investor confidence, if it's even possible. Gulf countries are going to be doubling down on thinking through how exactly to project stability and that the region is sort of back on its game and able to welcome a Gulf outside investment.
And looking at these Gulf states, do you think they come out of this more unified or divided?
It's an excellent question. We've seen that in the beginning weeks and couple months of this war with Iran, we've seen Gulf countries actually diversifying and taking very different approaches, as I said, ranging from Oman, which retained open channels to Iran, to the UAE, which took a much more aggressive posture against Iran. However, as we're beginning to see the outlines of how this war might end, we're actually seeing, I think, a return to some convergence among various GCC countries, in which they're all coming to the conclusion that they're going to have to find a way forward that includes Iran as part of the regional order. What that looks like, how they manage, those are all big questions that really are going to take months, if not years, to actually resolve.
And just to wrap, Mona, what will the Gulf leaders be looking for in a permanent deal that would convince them that their security concerns have been addressed?
Well, I think they're going to be looking at whether or not there are enforceable constraints on Iran and its behavior, its use of ballistic missiles and drones. And if they feel that there aren't strong constraints on Iran, then they're going to have to think about a new form of deterrence. How else can they deter Iran? And one of the theories that I've been hearing is that the approach may be one of deepening economic interdependence with Iran, essentially vesting Iran in the region's emerging economic order, incentivizing it so that it doesn't choose to attack and disrupt the order, but rather becomes more vested in it.
Okay, we'll wrap it up there. But thank you very much, Mona Yacoubian. We appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
You've heard what our expert thinks. Now it's over to you. What will the Iran-US agreement bring for the Gulf states? Stability, or is there a new reality in the region?